Hello, everyone. My name is Remo Loreto. I'm with Spring Valley Bank, RE Partners of Greater Cincinnati. Welcome to our first session in which we're going to start doing these live meetings once a week, every Wednesday at 12 noon. You can count on us, depend on us, and come here for information, get your questions answered, find out more about what Spring Valley Bank does and how we may be able to help you achieve and hopefully even exceed your goals. As we get started, since this is our first session, I thought I'd open up with giving you a little history of Spring Valley Bank. The bank is about 23 years old. The bank was started by a gentleman who was a real estate investor himself, and his name was Jerry Robinson. Jerry understood that there was a real need for a lender here in this market that understood investors and focused on investors. Jerry was an attorney. He started this bank and started lending to investors and built up quite a following, quite a reputation, and something that we continue to do today. I myself learned of Spring Valley Bank 22 years ago, so they were only about a year old when I learned of the bank. My very first purchase was financed by Spring Valley Bank, so I've known about this bank and how they do business almost from the very beginning. And in these years, over the years, I actually worked for another lender here in town. I'm a licensed realtor, but beginning in 2008 up into 2018 through the foreclosure crisis, I worked for another large lender here in town handling their REOs. I was basically the in-house realtor, if you will. And during that time frame, there were quite a few of the REOs that we sold that we did not finance. We would finance some of them, but we didn't finance all of them. And in those cases, I was sending the investors to Spring Valley Bank right then and there because I knew how strong the bank was in terms of financing investors. So I was sending deals here all along. In 2018, after the foreclosure crisis was essentially over, and I was preparing to leave the other lender, I was having a conversation with the bank president here, and the opportunity came up. He asked me if I'd be interested in working with investors here, and I said, absolutely. So I've been here 3.5 years now. It's been a great situation. I really enjoy working with investors, whether you're a seasoned investor or a new investor. I enjoy working with them and helping you achieve your goals to the best of my ability. I care deeply that you succeed, and I'll do anything I possibly can to help you succeed. So that gives you a little bit of an idea about the background of this bank, the age of the bank. The bank does, we do flip loans, we do portfolio loans, we do flip loans, portfolio style. We do buy and hold real estate income generating portfolio loans. The bank will also help people finance their home. We do owner occupied financing, but that's not the main thrust of this bank. The main thrust of this bank is loans for real estate investors. So with that said, let me touch a little bit on, today I'll talk a little bit about the flips. Because even in this market, flips are happening. There are investors out there that are finding properties, they're finding off-market properties. By the way, that is something that our marketing director here, Rachel Ann, is outstanding. If you go to the real estate, the Spring Valley Bank website, you will see that she scours the market for unknown off-market deals. So if you go to our website almost every day, you'll find a property or you'll see some properties that she has found that aren't on the MLS. And that's where the main bargains are. Not that you can't find a bargain on the MLS, you can, but it is extremely competitive as we all well know.
Viewers can also visit our YouTube channel at RE Partners of Greater Cincinnati. That's where they'll find short videos pertaining to information on local properties, whether they're residential or commercial in the area.
Thanks, Rachel Ann. That was Rachel Ann right there telling you where to go. You can always even call her directly if you have any questions. The bank number is 513 761-6688. Rachel Ann is always available. You can call me at any time, 513-661-9000. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions and help you any way that I can. So let's talk a little bit about flips right now. Flips, as I said, they are happening. When you find an appropriate deal and you want to bring the deal to this bank, the way the flip financing program works is that the bank will finance the rehab. They'll allow the incorporation of rehab funding into the loan, which is a very, very big deal. The LTV on flips is 85%. There's a 15% down payment required. And the way I like to explain it for simplicity is if you find a property for $80,000 and it has a $20,000 rehab budget, that's a $100,000 deal in total. So the bank will require 15% down of that total. That applies to all flips. You can use that formula. It's quite simple. The total value of your deal, 15% down is required. On the buy and hold side, and I'll just mention this, the bank will also allow the incorporation of rehab funding into your purchase, buy, and hold deals, but it requires a 25% down, a little bit more skin in the game. It's going to be an income-producing property, so the bank would like you to have a little bit more of your own money into the deal. With regards to flip financing, the bank will allow, you should think in terms of what the bank will allow on your rehab list, anything that is going to improve the value of the property. Obviously a new kitchen, new bathroom, new flooring, new HVAC, new roof, all of those things are going to improve the value of the property. There are a few things that the bank won't allow. You should be prepared for those things yourself. Any kind of permits or licenses that you need, that'll be on you. Typically a dumpster rental, that'll be on you. Any demolition, which by the very nature of the word, it sounds or means detracting, that can't go on the rehab budget. But after demolition, you have reconfiguration, and reconfiguration can go on your rehab budget. So the bank can be fairly flexible there. Let's talk a little bit about becoming pre-approved. I think that's something that I get asked about quite a bit. What is the process for pre-approval? As a lender that is federally regulated, there are certain guidelines that must be followed. So the same thing that is required for any mortgage is going to be required here. Basic application, credit authorization, 2 years worth of tax returns, 2 months worth of bank statements, 1 month worth of income verification if you're a W-2 employee. If you're not a W-2 employee, then a personal financial statement will be required. If you need a sample of a personal financial statement, we can provide you. I can provide you with that. A standard form, though, is fine. There's not a specific form that needs to be done. Going through the pre-approval process, there's no cost to become pre-approved. The advantage of being pre-approved is when you need a pre-approval letter to accompany your offer, all you do is call the bank and request a pre-approval letter. What the bank will require is the address for the subject property and the amount of your offer. Pre-approval letter will be generated immediately. That'll be specific to that property in your offer. What the bank won't do is give a pre-approval letter that will say this borrower has been pre-approved up to X number of dollars. That potentially will put you in a bad negotiating position. If you're going to offer substantially less than what you've been pre-approved for, the seller is going to know that you have a lot more money available to you and may counter accordingly. So all of our pre-approval letters are specific to this property and the amount of your offer. If you're not successful with that offer, don't feel bad. Oftentimes, especially in this market recently, it takes investors multiple tries to be the successful winner in the securing a property. So that's part of the pre-approval process. And by the way, also let me tell you, it came up this morning with someone. You won't be pre-approved for any specific amount. Once you're pre-approved, you are pre-approved. If you bring the bank a $50,000 deal, that's fine. If you bring the bank a $250,000 deal, that's fine. The property itself is going to carry a lot of weight in the deal. So if you bring a deal here and it's your very first one, it's a $250,000 deal. You've never done this before. The bank is going to ask you who is going to be doing the work, who are the contractors, what experience do they have. They realize that you don't have experience, but if you've brought a deal that has a strong upside and a lot of potential, if you have qualified people that are doing the work for you, you'll have a good chance of being approved on this deal. And when I say qualified, while I said that, let me tell you that typically, over the years, I've said that there are two really hard parts to this, and I've recently begun saying that there are three. In reality, there's only two, and that third one isn't hard, but people make it hard, and that is the application process. My recommendation to all borrowers is when you go through the application process, gather all of your docs and submit them all together at one time as opposed to piecemeal. Piecemeal invariably leads to delays. Piecemeal invariably leads to confusion and lost documents. If everything is submitted at one time in one package, it's substantially easier to process the pre-approval and the application itself. And the reason I said it's kind of a hard part is because invariably borrowers will want to, I'll get my tax return to you as soon as I can, or I'll get my bank statements as soon as I can. Really, the best option is to hold on to everything and submit it all at one time. And if you're asked for something, asking why do you need that, I understand sometimes there's a question, but if you're being asked for it, it's for federal regulations. The bank, there are certain things to be in compliance that the bank has to have regardless of whether we want to give them up or not. They are required. As portfolio loans, though, there is more flexibility. This bank has a lot more flexibility in doing these loans. So another question that I typically get is, what kind of credit score do I have to qualify for a loan with Spring Valley Bank? I have no one set answer. I can't say that it's going to require a 720 credit score, or I can't give you a number whatsoever, because as a portfolio loan, it's the bank's own money. As long as they comply with the application part of it, on the actual decision making, the lending and underwriting part of it, it's up to them. And so if someone has some credit challenges, but they're working on those challenges and they're making headway and improving, then the bank will quite possibly do the loan. I'm not going to say that a 500 credit score is going to qualify, but someone with credit challenges, I'd still encourage you to try. Let me go back briefly on the pre-approval. If the bank is unable for some reason to grant a pre-approval, that doesn't mean that the bank won't do a deal with you. They'll still do a deal with you. What that means is you won't be in a position to submit a pre-approval letter with your offer. But if you come to terms with a seller and you want to present a deal to this bank, the mere fact that you haven't been pre-approved is not going to stop them from looking at the deal. They'll still certainly look at the deal. And if there is a good upside and if the circumstances are right, then there's certainly the possibility exists that the bank will approve that deal for you. So that gives you a fair amount of information. Rachel Ann, has anybody asked any questions yet?
Well, we actually have a question from Mason asking, as far as the rehab funding is concerned, what aspects are not included as rehab funding?
Good question. I kind of touched on it, but again, let me emphasize that anything that's going to improve the value of that property can be considered, can go onto your rehab budget. Let me just mention, I'll give you a specific example. Since this is the bank's their own money, you need to look at the bank as a partner in this deal because they're looking at you as a partner in this deal. And for that reason, they're looking out for you. They may not see the value in a property that you see, or specific to this rehab budget idea. And I'll give you an example. You bring in your budget, and your budget includes all new windows. There are 10 windows in this property, and you have a rehab budget of $10,000 for windows alone. And the gentlemen on the lending committee are going to look at this and they're going to go, whoa, wait a second here. We think you're significantly overpaying for these windows. We will allow windows. We certainly encourage putting in new windows that adds value and appeal to a buyer. But instead of $10,000, we're going to budget $4,000, $400 a window, not $1,000 a window. And they have the right, since it's their own money, to go through your rehab budget. And it does happen that someone has submitted a rehab budget that just seems excessive. And in those cases, the bank may come back to you and they may approve your deal with a smaller rehab budget, maybe even eliminate certain things off the rehab budget. I mentioned that licenses and any kind of building permits can't go on there on your rehab budget. Another thing that can't go on your rehab budget is outdoor landscaping. Yes, that would enhance curb appeal, but landscaping can die, and it doesn't necessarily add lasting value to the property. So if you want to do landscaping, that's typically on you. Certainly, it's something that will, as I said, improve curb appeal, but the bank will not allow that on there. Now, with regards to landscaping, we have tree trimming. There are situations in which the property has been left vacant, not maintained for years, and the property has a great upside, great potential. Yes, it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of sweat equity, but there are tree branches that are overhanging the house, and it's overgrown and so forth. It's a little different situation there. Tree trimming is very expensive and dangerous. And so consequently, that is something typically that they'll allow. I'm not saying in every case, but if there are any kind of liability or danger issues there, that's something that can go on your rehab budget. Another thing that cannot go on your rehab budget are typically appliances. I'm talking about a single family home flip now. In today's age, yes, it's really nice when you're selling a property and you can say fully equipped, but people also understand, home buyers also understand that it's quite possible they're going to have to buy their own stove and refrigerator. So a stove, anything that's built in though, the dishwasher or microwave, actually a range often is built in. Anything built in can go on the rehab budget. If it's not built in, it cannot go on a rehab budget. So I hope that helped clear up any questions that anyone might have with regards to the rehab budget itself. And by the way, also let me mention, rehab budget can come to us in any form. It can be on a legal pad. It can be in an Excel spreadsheet. Some of the professionals have very sophisticated software. It doesn't have to be, but if you could submit it that way, that's fine. It can be on a napkin. It can be a lot of times they come in just in an email, broken down on a list on your email. That's fine. Any format is fine. There's nothing that's required. Rachel Ann, any other questions?
Yes, looks like we have one more from D. Jones in Delhi. She says that she turned in a little bit late, but wanted to know in regards to just beginning as a investor, how do you go about finding available properties?
D, if I can call you that, thanks for watching and thanks for calling in. There are numerous ways to find properties. It is tough now. There's no question about that. I had alluded to before, I said that there are three hard parts to this business, and I call them hard part 1A and hard part 1B, and I already told you about 1C. That's not really hard, but hard part 1A and 1B are this. Finding an appropriate property is hard part 1A. There's no question about that. Hard part 1B is finding a contractor that does what he says, when he says, how he says, at the price he says. If you have either one of those under control, or if you have an insight into either one of those, you have an advantage in the marketplace. But getting back to what you had asked about, finding properties, there are numerous places that you can look. Off-market properties are really your objective because you're not going to be in as big of a competitive situation. If you tuned in after what I had mentioned before, Rachel Ann, who read the question, she posts on the Spring Valley Bank website every day, new properties. She scours for investors. She's looking for opportunities for investors to find properties. So you can tune in to Rachel Ann's website, the bank's website. And then obviously you have the MLS. You may want to work with a realtor who is investor focused, investor friendly. You have Craigslist, you have wholesalers in town that you can network with, and they advertise often on Craigslist. And just talking to your friends and family and neighbors. One of the things that I tell investors, new investors, when you get a property, as soon as you get out to that property, every person that you see around that property and you make eye contact with, you immediately go to them and you introduce yourself and you let them know, tell them your name, tell them that you're there, you're going to be working on this property, tell them you're going to be seeing a lot of me. And, by the way, here's an opportunity to pick your neighbor if you know anybody that's looking for a property. And if you know anybody that wants to sell a property, I'm interested. I'm always buying properties. And that does work. There is absolutely no question. I'm working with a gentleman right now who's buying his third house on the same street. And so there's no question. It makes people feel comfortable when you go over to them and you introduce yourself and talk to them. They enjoy, knowing that property is going to be revitalized, bringing up the value of their own home in that neighborhood. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, and viewers can also go to our YouTube channel at RE Partners of Greater Cincinnati for video playlists that provide photos along with links and information for available properties in the market. Okay.
Rachel Ann, anything more?
That's great.
Well, folks, it's been a pleasure and an honor for me to be here. Feel free to call me. If I miss your call, I'll get back to you as quickly as I can, and I'll be honored to help you any way that I possibly can. Thanks for your time today. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.